English section of the breakout room 2. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Grayson Hutchinson. I'm one of the lead interns at the Office of Student Equity, and I am the president of the Cabrillo GSA. I have been for 2 years, and I am incredibly honored to be here speaking on behalf of my school and my community today. This is just a snippet of last year's community of the Rainbow Council and GSA. This photo was taken at our lavender graduation. So I just want you to see how strong of a community it is. And it's not even a community, it's like a family. Like, I love all of these people up here, the Rainbow Council and GSA, like they are my own. So we're gonna have Adam Spickler start our presentation.
Thanks, Grayson.
Thanks, Grayson. Okay, this is on. I'm not sure how much this is needed. It's not a super packed room, but I appreciate all of you that are here. And you know, if you're in touch with any high school students that are thinking about Cabrillo College and they're here today, and you want to text me and tell me to come check us out, or just keep our information and share it with high school students. So to start off with a brief introduction to me, I was elected in 2018 to represent what's for Cabrillo Area 2 for the college on the college's governing board as a trustee. And when I arrived, I was sworn in December of 2018. And when I arrived and started to spend the first 6 months of my term really looking around and determining what's already going on at the school, I quickly found that there really was no LGBT programming or targeted support in any way. There were teachers who were doing phenomenal work, including LGBTQ topics and perspectives in their particular curriculums, but they were doing that in silos. And there were no student services outside of classes that were organized around LGBTQ specific needs. There was LGBTQ competency, but it wasn't organized in any way. And most troubling to me is there was no safe, specific space for LGBTQ students to find, to gather, to seek out support, to find each other. So that's really where things started. And I would say, if you could advance to the next slide, that would be great. So I noticed all of that, and I would start by saying, why does any of that matter? Why does having LGBTQ supports matter? This is all data that I'm gonna assume all of you are either familiar with, or to glance at, you'll go, yeah, that tracks. This is data from 2017, and I'm gonna guess that the numbers have only inflated since then. But we have a significant number of students in our classrooms across the grades who either currently or at some point in their future are going to identify as LGBTQ. And this doesn't even take into account the students who have an LGBTQ family member or somebody important in their lives. So all the ways in which we support our LGBTQ students matter because they are here, and because the ways we either show up or the ways that we remain silent and don't show up impact their lives. You can move on to the next slide. So, oh, and by the way, I'll just say that last slide, all of that data is from the Williams Institute. It's really easy to find. There's a web link here, but if you Google Williams Institute, it'll take you to their website and make their data really easy to find. So, why is it important to do this work, and who do we look to get the work done? I would say first and foremost, especially at the K-12 level, who is your leadership? And if your leadership, they themselves aren't out as identifying as LGBTQ, make them out themselves as LGBTQ allies. That is so important. And how you do that is you show up at board meetings. You show up at meetings, you write letters, you talk about the work that your students are doing, and you make that really present, really first and foremost to the leadership of the school. We didn't have students who were empowered to do that at Cabrillo and that was evident, right? I talked about how in my first 6 months I didn't see anything. That's because the students who work here and are trying to they were siloed, they weren't getting the support they needed. So I was able to speak to that at the leadership level, and I was really pleased to get a tremendous amount of support. The college president, Matt Wetstein, who's still our president, at the time he said to me, yeah, absolutely, let's figure out how to find the funds and put space and put resources together. And it really should live in our Office of Student Equity. Let's figure out how to do this. And over the course of the next several years, that's exactly what we did. And it's because we had committed leadership, we were able to get that done. And it was both a commitment at the leadership level and a commitment to make sure that we allowed for student leadership to take place. And you heard from Gracie at the beginning of this meeting, and you're gonna hear from Mars pretty soon, and how this has impacted her journey. And that is so critical. Student leadership is so critical. So I'm just so pleased that we were able to put that in place.
If you could move to the next slide.
So what the history of the Cabrillo Rainbow Council is, it's brief, but it is impactful. So you heard me mention the support we got from the college president back in 2019 when I was still just observing what was going on at Cabrillo. By 2020, we were writing for a grant, and we were actively seeking funding to make sure we were gonna put LGBTQ resources together for the college. And we were awarded a grant. And we pretty quickly put together a task force to say, okay, we've now got funds, state level funds, where we have to report back to the state what we're doing with those funds. And what the state wants to know is, how are we supporting student leadership? How are we empowering our student leadership to work with our college leadership to make sure that there's programming, with events, and that there's curriculum support. So that's 2020 was putting that task force together. 2021, you saw us starting to advance some of that work. I think that was the first year that our college's Gender and Sexuality Alliance formed. And we've now got a thriving GSA at Cabrillo. The leadership is impactful. When they see some aspect of the college taking a misstep, within 2 weeks, there is a letter from the GSA aimed at some arm of the leadership of the college saying, hey, we observed this needs adjusting, this needs your attention, this can't happen. Thank goodness for our GSA doing that, because not everything is gonna show up at the leadership level. And there are other ways in which we named ourselves the Rainbow Council, and we started to put the footprint together to do things in the following years, like we had our first lavender graduation, we had our first queer prom. The GSA started planning and hosting events that you're gonna hear Mars and Grayson talk about in just a short while. And then in the following year, we really started to get active with other community events. I only listed a few there, but in addition to Quila and the Queer Youth Task Force and Queer Youth Summits, we also started participating in prides locally, both in the city of Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville with Pajaro Valley Pride and Santa Cruz Pride. And we have started to network and show up in ways where Cabrillo is not siloed any longer. We are part of the community. And it's been empowering. It's helped us build our tools and our acumen. And I'm really proud of the way we're showing up. Most importantly, it is helping us identify ways we can let the larger K-12 community know we are no longer just a safe space college as we've been for many years. We are a thriving, active environment where LGBTQ students, history, competencies are celebrated and brought to the forefront. And that our K-12 students need to know this, that we are an economically smart and safe and thriving place for LGBTQ students to go to college. And with that, I will pass it on to the next person. I hope I can take it.
No, you're actually right on.
Okay, so my name is Mars Redmond. I'm currently the Vice President of the Cabrillo Gender Sexuality Alliance, the GSA. I recently, not super recently, but I moved to Santa Cruz about 5.5, 6 years ago. I moved here from Texas, and before that I had lived all across the United States, primarily in more red states and conservative areas. Like, I was born in Florida, I lived in Indiana, I lived in Orange County, I lived in Texas. All of these places where LGBTQ competency, even just that, just competency, was very rare to see at all, any sort of presence of any real LGBTQ community. And that was very far from even like, using your pronouns in class, things like that. Just was not a commonplace practice in any of these places that I had lived in before. So I moved to Santa Cruz about 6 years ago, and when I moved here, I went to SoCal High School, and that was my first real exposure to the LGBTQ community as an actual community, rather than just knowing a few, gay students or trans students, seeing an actual community being built. Because it was there that I found out about the queer sexuality alliance, at Cabrillo, or not at Cabrillo, sorry, at SoCal High. And that was my first exposure to that, because in some of my emails to my teachers, as I was sort of coming out to them, I would say, I'm experimenting with they, them pronouns. I just wanted to let you know that I would prefer in class if you use that. And this was primarily during COVID, so it was a mix of being in person a few days a week and being online a few days a week, which definitely makes it harder to kind of figure yourself out and find other people like you. So that was my first exposure, that a lot of those teachers told me, oh, I'm glad you're experimenting with that. You should join our QSA. You should get involved and get in touch with these officers of this group. And from my involvement in that kind of led me to when I went to Cabrillo last year, to finding the Cabrillo College Gender Sexuality Alliance here. And I really just have to thank those teachers who made that effort, because that is a big thing to do for a student, to direct them somewhere besides, because it's a great start to say, that's awesome. I'm glad you're experimenting with that. I respect that. And it's another very important step to say, here's some other people your age and your grade who you might already know, who are making an effort to organize queer people at this school. So I joined the Cabrillo College GSA, and that was definitely a big step up from the QSA. Not that the QSA was bad, but just simply that it's a high school and it's going to be less student run and less able to organize events and things like that. So being in the Cabrillo GSA was really kind of a new experience in seeing how, sorry, I haven't really been speaking into the mic, how important it is to have student run and student directed events. And it was really through those groups that I was able to build confidence, find people like me to hang out with. Because I don't think I would be out as a trans woman right now without that experience in the past 5 to 6 years, because everywhere else I've lived, that has never been an option. It has never been something that you see out in public and say, I want to do that, because you just don't see people as often who are out and organized and feel comfortable. So getting a chance to be the vice president of the Career College GSA has been a really amazing experience, to just see how rapidly advancing a lot of LGBTQ organization on campus, especially at Cabrillo, is. Because this GSA was very recently started. This is only the 3rd year of it, and it's just amazing to me how quickly we have become a thriving club with happy members who meet to feel comfortable with themselves and to organize larger efforts.
Before we switch the slides, I want to say, you can't really see the pictures kind of cropped out. That's me, Mars, and our best friend Annabelle. She couldn't be here today, but Mars met Annabelle through the SoCal QSA, and Mars and I met through the Cabrillo GSA, and we are all very good friends. We're more like family, honestly, at this point, and that's another big benefit, like we talked about, of being able to say, I need to find this community, because even though we might not be like the same parts of LGBT, we still have that understanding and that respect that you don't get from people who don't understand your life. So can we go to the next slide, please? Well, hi everybody. My name is Grayson Hutchinson. So this picture up here is two of my favorite teachers. That one on the left. I always get them mixed up. That's Dr. Kristen Wilson. She is one of my favorite teachers here at Cabrillo. Her class was actually the first class I ever took in person at Cabrillo. It was honors biological anthropology, and I fell in love and switched my major because I realized also Cabrillo is a safe space. This is the first teacher that ever really talked about LGBT things existing, and it's a biological anthropology class, so you think, oh, it's going to be very strictly science, like this is a man, this is a woman, this is how we evolved. But no, she talked to us about things like trans women in sports, natural testosterone in women, natural estrogen in men, intersex people, and this was a whole world I had never seen before and never been exposed to. I grew up in Sacramento, California, and I lived in a very rich white neighborhood. So being the only Asian kid was already a struggle. So you can imagine being the autistic trans kid in middle school and high school. I was the first kid to come out in my middle school, and it definitely put a target on my back. Some of you were here for the student panel. I struggled with the locker rooms, and I struggled a lot with owning who I was. Instead of embracing the community, which I should have done, it became more of I don't want to be associated with these people because they're being bullied and targeted, and I'm already being bullied and targeted. So if I join the GSA, I'm going to get targeted, and I know a lot of students in the K through 12 have that fear, and we're going to be talking more later on about that, about how we make events for allies and LGBT people to be there without feeling like they're being forced out. I came to Cabrillo College. I have a learning disability. I have several. And so college was not on my radar. I grew up very gifted, but the older I got, mental health got really bad, bullying, and just struggling with my sense of self-worth. So I come to Cabrillo, and my parents told me when I was in high school, they thought I was going to go to Stanford on a full ride, and then my senior year, they were like, it's a miracle if you graduate. So that was very hard for me to go from that place of high expectations to, please just graduate high school. So I go to Cabrillo, and I start going to the hub because of teachers like Dr. Wilson, and I get a 4.0 my first semester. I got a 3.9 last year. I went to the hub, I started going to the nest, I went to student health services, I went to financial aid, I went to EOPS, and I got these resources that made going to school easier, because it's hard enough being trans, but being a trans person of color and disabled, it's a lot going on at once. So I ended up meeting Devin Walker. Dr. Walker isn't here today, but he is the head of the Office of Student Equity, and he's one of the chairs of the Rainbow Council. I met him one day. It's pretty embarrassing. There are these footsteps that were leading up to the Office of Student Equity takedown, and I was like, I'm gonna follow them. There was free food in there, so I went in, and I tried to run out with my free food, and he's like, hi, and I'm like, oh. I'll talk to you now. I ended up getting hired. I was one of the first interns at the Office of Student Equity, and I ended up being put on the GSA project with Tobin Keller. He's right there. He has been our biggest leader, along with Adam and Steve Scheschler, who's not here today, in helping the GSA move forward, and we have planned so many events which we will show you And we are hoping that by seeing what Cabrillo College does, you can mix elements of it into your school, and you can see, even if you can't exactly replicate a queer prom, you can have something similar. You can have a special lunch day. You can have a special after-school activity, because those things matter. So let's do the next slide, please. I'd like to start. This was actually our first GSA event. This was the day Mars and I became friends. So the GSA at Cabrillo College was very small at first. We only had maybe 3 people who were not officers there on a good day. So we were all talking together in a meeting, and we were like, what do we do to get the community involved? What's something low key and easy? Movie day. Kung Fu Panda 4. And so we were thinking about it, and we're like, okay, we'll go to the Santa Cruz Cinema, we'll support a local business. And we got in with some other clubs. We invited WISE, Women in STEM and Engineering, we love them too, the Honors Club, and a few other ones. I think ended up joining Active Minds, our mental health club. And it was a great day to go as a community and just be. Nothing about it was LGBT, and this is why I think implementing something like a movie day is important, because I know people are scared, especially younger people, are scared to go to things that are labeled LGBT, queer. This was a movie day. You wouldn't know it was a gay movie day based off of our outfits or what we were doing, but the sense of community was built. One of my strongest friendships was made this day enjoying a movie with friends. And so many people, we got to meet new people and do new things, and it wasn't that expensive. It was, about $10 a ticket. I'm sure you could work something out with a local theater or something, but things like this that are not outright LGBT are what help students make that first step into, I want to see what the GSA is like. Because people who went to that movie realized, oh, the GSA isn't this embarrassing rainbow flag club. Like, I can just go to a movie and enjoy. We don't have the picture up there, but we ended up going roller skating one day. It wasn't gay roller skating, it was roller skating. But we were able to get allies to come with us, and that's what we want. We want to normalize LGBT people. We want to celebrate them, but also normalize our place in the community, because we eat the same food as straight people. We like the same things. We want to go to the movies, we want to go roller skating, and having these events where people and allies can say, hey, I'm going to go roller skating with you, and not having it be a big deal, a big gay deal, as my father would call it, is very, very important. And I'm hoping that you guys will see our slideshow and think of ways that we can slowly start normalizing our community while also celebrating them and finding that balance. Now let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. Marsh, you want to start off by telling the history of Trans Day of Remembrance so we can give people a brief preview of what it is?
Yeah, so Trans Day of Remembrance was founded in 1999 after the murder of Rita Hester and Chanel Pickett, who were 2 Black transgender women. And it was started because people in the LGBT community, especially trans women and trans men and non-binary people, were looking at these tragically high rates of untimely, completely unnecessary death, usually from a partner or from an act of hate, largely against transgender women, and they were saying their community forgets them very quickly. It's like, we go check back in with this person who has unfortunately been killed, 1-2 years later, and it's as though their school, their parents, their family has either completely erased that they were out and proud as a transgender person, or they've just completely been forgotten, and their death almost seemed to mean nothing. And so people saw this and they say, this isn't how it should be. It should be that this horrible thing is recognized and that we come out and see a correlation here, because if you erase the fact that these people were trans women, trans men, non-binary people, you erase that transgender people face, disproportionate rates of violence because of their identity. And it served to be just a way in general to remember these people who have been forgotten by their very communities. And at Cabrillo College itself, this event began much more recently. I believe 2023 was the first time it was done. It was done mostly by the Rainbow Council's dedication to making that happen, which is just a great thing because, as you can see from these events, these are very important moments of recognizing the pain that LGBT people face, and not just recognizing the pain, but meeting with other people and just being together at a time like this. Because looking at these headlines, if you see headlines or you hear about violence that transgender people are facing, it's very daunting, especially as a lone trans person or as a lone LGBT person, to see all of the violence that trans people are facing. It's very bleak a lot of the times. So having this event, especially at Cabrillo, just serves as a very important reminder of this isn't something we have to deal with alone. This isn't something that is an isolated thing. This has to be dealt with as a community, which is what the Rainbow Council did. We started this Trans Day Remembrance here at Cabrillo, and we've had one in 2023, we had one in 2024, we're going to have one again this year. So we have some pictures from the first Trans Day of Remembrance here, and got like 3 or 4. We just got a few pictures of, and this is 2024's Trans Day of Remembrance. It was a lot more gloomy that year. We didn't take as many good pictures, but it just goes to show that how important it is to have a big student presence for this, because people also walk by this event and they see what's going on, and they become aware of this because they see these signs of the just sheer amount of unfortunate premature deaths that trans people have faced. So now I'm gonna hand it back to Grayson Hutchinson to.
Well, I'm going to speak a bit on TDOR, so go ahead, please. So, actually, TDOR was student-led. I was a student. Devin Walker, he sits me down in his office and he says, "You work here now." And I said, "Okay, I need a job." And he asks me, "What does the LGBTQ community do?" And I was like, "Well, there's pride. Of course there's pride. We all know pride. But something that's always stuck out to me was Transgender Day of Remembrance. It's 2 days before my birthday, so I've always stuck with it. I came out when I was in 5th grade. I was 10 years old, and it's very interesting seeing how things are so much different now, a decade later, seeing how much more open things are. I remember going to TDOR vigils growing up, actually. I went to a very progressive church. I'm no longer religious, but that memory did stick with me. And one big thing that we did, and something that I hope high schools and even middle schools can implement, we hung up the pictures of every trans person that was killed in between 2023 and 2024. And we did that the year before also because they put out a list. Adam, do you remember what it's called, the group that puts out the list? I will find that. I'll put it in the link to our resources, but we look at it and it has a picture of their face, their age, bio, name, and pronouns, and where they were from and how they were killed. And imagine you walk into the quad, our very normal quad, and you see hundreds of people hanging up in the trees. It was quiet. People weren't laughing in the quad. They walked up and they saw a black trans woman killed by her partner. And over 70% of these are due to gun violence. And I would say, I don't want to get political, but this is all about politics because my identity, our identities, are politics now, unfortunately. Guns are the main cause of death. Trans women are disproportionately murdered. 90% of the people that were hung up were trans women, and I believe 80% were trans women of color. Most of them were black. And everyone, when they walked into the quadrant, they saw all these people. Each year, they were quiet. And that's when I think it really set in for some people. Even if they didn't want to come by our table, they realized how many people were gone. And that's the importance of Trans Day of Remembrance. It is a sad day, but queer history is sad sometimes.
The GSA network is a great place.
The GSA network is where you get the names and the names and bios, and that is one of our main events each year. Mars and I are graduating this year, and one of my biggest hopes and dreams is we are going to go table at high schools. So if anyone here is a high school teacher, again, plug us. I would love it. And we want to find our next generation of GSA leaders. We want TDOR has become a staple of the Cabrillo College community. People were asking me last year, they said, Grayson, are you going to do that event again? And I was like, oh, you mean the prom? Because everyone loves the prom. I love the prom. They're like, no, the Trans Day. And I was like, oh my God, you guys remember that? They're like, it's been burned into my mind. And it's crazy seeing, because I think we all still realize these are our family members, these are our communities, this is the person you sit next to on the bus, this is a student in your class. Anyone can be up in those, anyone can be on that list and hung up in the trees. And we need to make sure, as a community, no one from here or anywhere is up there again. So let's go to the next. Queer prom. Well, let's see. We've had this year's going to be our third annual queer prom, and I want to talk about the importance. This is mainly geared towards middle school, high school. I know the Diversity Center does an awesome queer prom that students can attend, so I highly recommend that you forward your students to that. Our queer prom is really important because a lot of the time when you are in high school or you are in middle school, you are not dating the person you want to be with. You are not in the clothes you want. You might not even get the name or pronouns that you want. I know so many people who had their proms ruined because they were forced to wear a dress or wear a suit, or they had to pretend that they wanted to be with a guy or girl when that wasn't really who they are. And queer prom allows you to be an adult and live your truth. It allows you to wear what you want, and it allows you to go with who you want. And that is the importance of it, because it's also LGBT and student led, so it's what we want. And we are so lucky that the Rainbow Council has given us the gift of a queer prom 3 years in a row. And it's something that we don't take for granted. Can you please click through? I'd like to show you some pictures from last year. This might not have been possible for these people in high school, but let's leave it on that slide for a minute. This one. It's beautiful. Like, whenever I see pictures of the queer prom, it genuinely, like, I don't cry much, but it does really resonate with me because there are so many times where you don't get to live the life you want and live as who you truly are. Because I know so many people who didn't get to wear the dress, or they didn't get to go with the girl. They didn't get to go with their specific date. They had to go as friends. Seeing them dance together with their partner, seeing them go with their friends, letting them have Polaroids of pictures with their chosen family, that's what matters. That sense of community and being able to feel special, even if it's just for one night, means the world. Not just to trans people, LGBT people, allies were there. And you know what? Yes, it was the queer prom, but also we were normalized in that space. It wasn't like, oh, there's that gay couple over there. They're just a couple. That's the point of things like queer prom and GSA movie days. You can just be a couple. You can just be a group of friends. And that's what I think the purpose of how we design these slides and presentation would be, to stand out, but also to normalize our lives and who we are. So let's keep going down the slides. And then, do you want to talk about the history of Lavender graduation, Mars? I think that'd be really cool.
Lavender Grad was an event that was founded in 1995 after a lesbian woman named Ronnie Sanlo was barred from her children's graduation ceremonies because of her sexual orientation. In response, because she wasn't just going to take that, she created the Lavender graduation as an opportunity to honor LGBTQ plus students, specifically in their achievements in their graduation. And we're very glad that this event has been brought to Cabrillo College. It's only in about 200, well actually, it's in about 200 universities and colleges across the United States, which is just amazing to hear, and that number grows every year as more schools see the importance of that and start implementing that. So for bringing that, I really want to mainly thank Tobin for bringing the Lavender Grad here, because it's just been such an amazing event. I've only been to one of them so far, but it's just such a relieving kind of event, because a lot of times in my head, larger events like, you know, prom in high school or your normal graduation ceremony are typically events I think of as stressful. I'm like, oh, we have prom coming up, oh, we have graduation coming up. But to see these spaces where we specifically highlight LGBTQ people and their achievements and their role is just really empowering and relieving to me, just as it is to so many LGBTQ plus students, staff, and teachers. Because it's not just about the students, it's about our mentors and our staff and our trustees and our teachers. So then another one is coming up this May, actually, the third one? The third Lavender Grad at Cabrillo. And I know the entire GSA can't wait. We got some pictures of it too. So,
let's go back to a second on the Lavender Grad. I want to add a couple of things. So let's look on this picture. So that's Steve Scheffler. I love him. He couldn't be here today. But another thing that we did at Lavender graduation is we did a rainbow scholarship where we asked students to say how have they been an ally or how have they been an LGBTQ student at Cabrillo, and the responses were astonishing, because it's nice knowing that there are people who care who aren't in the community. And this rainbow scholarship, I believe it went between $100 and $500 depending on participation, and Mars and I were recipients of that award along with most members of the GSA. We are very lucky to have the funds to do that, but even small things like taking your students out for lunch or planning a special after-school activity could be an equivalent to a rainbow scholarship, because I know we don't always have the funds for that. Now, a bit of my experience with Lavender graduation, I got into a bunch of very nice 4-year universities when I finished high school. And I remember seeing Tobin's face on the Cabrillo website for Lavender graduation. And I remember he was wearing his hat, his little purple hat. Yeah, I know, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I remember that was the moment that I decided I was going to Cabrillo College. I mean, there were a lot of reasons, but seeing the Lavender graduation and that the school, and it was the first Lavender graduation actually, and seeing that the school cared enough to have a Lavender graduation solidified my choice that I was going to stay in Santa Cruz County and that I was going to pursue my education, because I was struggling a lot with learning disabilities and issues at home with my family, but I went to Cabrillo. I got the NEST, I got EOPS, I got the Rainbow Council, and I have been able to stay in school and continue my journey because of Cabrillo, and me and Mars are very honored to graduate at the Lavender graduation this year. And, you know, it's funny because I went from, I never want to be in a GSA or do anything, to graduating at the Lavender graduation. That is the only graduation I'll be attending. I hate long. I hate watching 3,000 people go across the stage. But that's the impact of it, because even if you have a small group of people who are graduating from middle school or high school or even elementary school, just acknowledging you are LGBT, you are an ally even. You mean something to me. You matter. It means the world, and it makes your school a safe space. And even people who don't end up going to it, they have that knowledge in their head. So let's go to the next slide, because I want to talk about our favorite thing, pride. So, as many of you know, we are at the 50th Pride at Santa Cruz County, and Cabrillo was a big part of Pride when it first started. So we are very excited to be here again. We have participated in many Prides, and then we can flip through the slides and just see the different pictures. This is our 2023 Pride. And then that's another 2023 Pride. This is our Rainbow Council and GSA marching together. This is us making signs last Pride in Cohen's room with the GSA. And this was this year's Pride 2024. Now the reason that it's so important that Cabrillo goes to these things, and it's the reason it's important that your institutions go to Pride, is because you want to show the community you stand with the LGBTQ community. And like I said, we are lucky to have the funds to have things like banners and be able to spend money on different posters and fun supplies. You can still do that on a budget. Just showing up even if you can't be in the parade, showing up wearing your school's merch and saying, we are here, we support our students, and showing us that you care about us means the world. Because you know, Mars and I will go somewhere and we're like, we saw those people at Pride. We'll go to that business. Oh, we like that school because we saw them at Pride. Because it sticks with you. And Pride has become very capitalist. You know, everyone wants to be gay on June 1st, and then we're in clearance July 1st. But our Pride should be year-round, and that is something that Cabrillo College has. That's why we have our TDOR in November. We have Queer Prom and Lavender Grad in the spring. We always show up. And then can we go to the next slide, please? We also are starting to show up more in Watsonville. Cabrillo has a Watsonville campus, as many of you know, and showing your support in Watsonville is so important because there is less exposure there. There are less events that happen there, and we are working to bring the GSA and Rainbow Council to Watsonville. We go to the events, we show up, we educate people. That's the importance of this. And for example, we went to Pajaro Valley Pride this year. As many of you know, there was a monkeypox scare. There was a lot of misinformation spreading about the LGBTQ community when monkeypox first started happening. And by going to that event and supporting the Santa Cruz Health group, we were able to show our support for spreading correct information and that we are allied in truth. And then I think, yeah, you can go on. Yeah, there you go, there's us. That's my dog Thumper. And then I believe, oh yes, and then the last thing that we have is, these are various classes that Cabrillo offers of teachers, amazing teachers, allies, LGBT teachers alike, who have stepped up for us and wanted to show their allyship and that they support us. And I want you to be able to tell your students, whether they're going to graduate this year or they graduate in 4 years, Cabrillo has a place for them. We have dual enrollment. They can take these classes now. This is a possibility. You do not need to wait until you graduate high school to go to Cabrillo College. Dual enrollment is open for high school students. Encourage your students to go to dual enrollment, to go to these classes, because we need it. You know, Mars and I, we are in a women gender studies, sexuality studies class. That class almost got shut down. That class is only happening because of a private donator. And that's sad, because people are trying to eliminate our classes by encouraging your students to dual enroll, and by even putting yourself in these classes. You can grow as a person, and we can maintain feminist, LGBTQ, person of color, activism, and education in our community. And I believe after that, we just have a Q&A, so if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and then address whoever you want to answer it.
Good morning, my name is Patricia Greenway. I work here in Career Services at Cabrillo College. I'm not only here for Cabrillo, but I'm also the parent of a trans middle school student. I've heard all three of you talk about being in the community and also just inviting high school students to campus, being out in the community, talking with high school students. But I want to encourage you to also include middle schools as well, because my son is very active with Muscle Careers at B40 Middle School. He's in 7th grade, but he's taken on a leadership role, and I think encouraging those middle school students, because they're gonna be transitioning to high school and then college, I think starting in middle school and letting them know about the support that's here at Cabrillo may not only encourage them to do things in high school and in their middle schools, but encourage them to come to campus for dual enrollment classes that they can do during high school, encourage them to come to Cabrillo and get involved with a lot of the things that you guys are doing on campus, and it might inspire them to do things on their own campuses. But I love that you're being inclusive with the high schools, but please don't forget about the middle school students and staff that are out there within this community that we're here supporting today.
I think Adam can really talk about our involvement in the Queer Youth Leadership Awards, because we actually do touch on middle schools there, and we are continuing to extend our reach.
Yeah, no, thank you for that comment. I will just quickly say what's already working really well and is really inspiring in our community is how coordinated the County Office of Education has been with the Queer Youth Task Force and the Safe Schools Project and its reach into the middle schools and even the elementary schools. Because the Rainbow Council is still pretty new, that relationship is still new, but it's developing and it's developing strong. So our ability to network with the County Office of Education and the Queer Youth Task Force to make sure whatever graphics we have, whatever bits and pieces of like social media information we can get out that can be shared both at the middle school and high school levels, we're working that angle. I'm gonna keep working that angle.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, times that we're at right now with messages that we're hearing from the top, how is that impacting, or have you seen a different impact when it comes to trying to bring you to be in GSAs or even at schools? I work with youth at high school, and they're even asking questions that they weren't asking before, because they're hearing what's in the news, they're hearing the negative messaging that's being said. So, can you talk a little bit on that, and how, also, if you can add, how can we still be supportive when the messages that are coming, it's not the messaging that we have when it comes to supporting you?
I think Mars and I are very politically, well, Mars is my main source of political information, and we have really worked on political activism lately and spreading correct information, for example, about monkeypox or about the election and certain rights that you have. And I think as a teacher, the best thing you can do is you say, I am here for you. I have this space for you, and also letting people be sad or confused in that space, but also encouraging something like a movie day. Have a movie in your class. Have a special lunch. Do something after school as a group. Say, yes, times are tough, and it is not a burden a child should have to carry, but it is a burden that they are forced to carry, and all you can do is offer a safe space to be sad, but also create spaces to be happy and solidify that community.
Yeah, I I was sort of surprised actually, because after Trump had been elected, I sort of expected GSA might get fewer, more new members, that people might get more scared to go out in public being openly LGBTQ. So I sort of expected, oh, we're gonna see less new people, we're gonna have less attendees for events, but surprisingly I noticed, I feel like we actually get more people coming out to events, and not only just showing up, but realizing they need to get on it in general. Like it really was, like even for me personally, it was kind of a wake-up call when he had been elected that I need to take advantage of the fact that HRT is fairly accessible now. And I know many other trans LGBT students at Cabrillo and friends of mine who also realized that when that had happened of, okay, this isn't something we are guaranteed access to. Like we need to take advantage of these things when we can. And I really like what Grayson said about making a space that people can be sad in, because that's very important. Like some of the early meetings we had for GSA after Trump had been elected and after he had been inaugurated, were just kind of, you know, when we start the meetings, we're like, how are people feeling? What are you guys' thoughts? What have you been thinking about? What have you been doing that's channeling your thoughts too? Because being sad is very important, and it's also important to make sure you have things in your life that you can focus your energy on that benefit you, that benefit other people. So I think having that space that people are allowed to feel sad in, and then thinking heavily about why they are sad, because a lot of times it goes beyond, you know, Trump is elected and I'm scared, more deeply into, well, why was he elected? I mean, it's scary the fact that, you know, some 52% of voters voted him into office. People are very scared about, like, he's the president, and people, the majority of voters at least, wanted him to be president. So there's just a lot more deeper things that come up from that sadness that, especially when you facilitate those situations, when you allow people to be sad and to vocalize that you can take those thoughts that they're saying and think about these and say, what can we do and implement to address that? And for GSA and Cabrillo so far, it's just been opening up those safe spaces and encouraging people to talk to their, you know, teacher, talk to GSA officials, talk to people basically, and share your concerns, and don't let fear destroy your efforts, I guess.
If I could add to respond, the message that I hope folks take away from this, which is really about what Grayson and Mars were sharing and what our panelists shared early this morning, it is codified in state law in California that we have every right from administrations on down, K through 14, to provide not only safe spaces for students to gather, but curriculum that helps enrich LGBTQ competencies. What I hope teachers feel empowered who are listening to this, whether it's here today or online once this gets posted, is if you're feeling like maybe there isn't space on your your school's campus to have a GSA to provide space, that you can ask for it, and you can ask for your administration to not only allow it, but to help support and promote it. Because your safe space for students, your ability to hang a poster in the classroom or a postcard in the classroom that says this is a safe and welcoming space, your ability to start up a club if it doesn't exist yet, or grow membership, that only happens when you're allowed to promote it. And you need to know, as a teacher, that you're secure, safe, covered, and protected to support and promote those activities. And it is 100% your administration's responsibility to provide that security for you. If you have any questions about that, The County Office of Education is a great place to turn. Cabrillo can be an ally to you. We don't have any authority over the K-12 districts, but we can certainly provide resources and information and support to you in seeking that out. Most of the superintendents, the school districts that I'm aware of, understand their responsibilities in state law. So let's just work together. Let's provide that space. Our ability to protect and provide these student supports that were talked about are only as strong as our ability to tell students that they exist.
Thank you, and then I think Toby, you'll be our last speaker.
I just want to make, I have a compliment and a comment. Grayson and Mars, you are representative of what a student voice can do for, such an educational organization like Cabrillo. You stood up, speak up, and you have such powerful voices. And then we have the support from our administration and our governing board. Adam, you've been an amazing leader and instigator, and I really appreciate that. But our administration, from our president, Matt Wittstein, to our Office of Student Equity, Devin, and our Student Services, they've stepped up, which has allowed, greater representation. So I'm really happy to be a small part of it, but it's your voices and it's the continuing student voices that is truly inspiring. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, and everybody, it's time for lunch. Thank you so much for coming, I really appreciate it.
You have tables out there?
Yes.